right, everyone, this is Fernando here for an all new My Movie Review podcast. Well, it is that time for me to share yet another review associated with a film that I recently saw. In this case, the films that I stream whenever I'm doing my exercises. And what a way to go back into the past yet again when it comes to these films. Last time I started off this series with a Jean Claude Van Damme film, of course, the one that's called Lionheart, one of my favorites of his. This one, I decided to go back even a little bit further and have it be his second of the trilogy that's considered some of the best movies that he was in. So it was Kickboxer in this case, and then it was Lionheart, the one I just mentioned, and then the other one is Bloodsport. So I'll see if I can find a chance to watch Bloodsport sometime soon. But yes, those are the three films early on, pretty much at the very beginning of his career, that are considered some of his best work. And I agree. I mean, they definitely have some great stuff associated with them. And such was the case here with Kickboxer. I don't recall ever actually seeing all the film from before. I've only seen parts of it. So even though this was a way to go back in time and catch it again, it was almost like experiencing it for the very first time because a lot of these scenes I had never seen before. And so it was really neat to be able to finally have a chance to go through the entire movie and then watch this stuff unfold. Plus, really neat little bonus almost of sorts. It was almost amazing to see how Street Fighter 2 in this case, was a video game that was heavily influenced by this movie. More on that here in a minute. So let's go ahead and let's do my review here for Kickboxer. So yes, this was a film that came out in 1989. This was again during the pinnacle or the very, very start of Jean Claude Van Damme's wonderful action martial arts films. These are the ones that had a bunch of great action, but also good storylines associated with them. And as an extra bonus, the actual acting was great too. And once again, everyone was pretty much giving their all. What could have been a really cheesy movie, something that would have just been filled with horrible acting, it didn't really merit having some of the acting that it did. These actors, everyone within them, definitely gave them their all. Even the guy that played the bad guy associated with this film, he was very, very memorable. Even the brother, as you just saw that shot of Jean-Claude Van Damme there in the film, he gave it his all. There was the mentor that also did a pretty good job. Even the damsel in distress, that lady who that played his, I guess, almost girlfriend within the film, she also did really, really well. So I was surprised again by the range of acting within this film. I love it. It's definitely a welcome surprise, considering again how hokey and how corny some of this stuff could have been. But yes, let's talk about the pros again first, and then I'll talk about the cons. So besides the acting, another pro is the storyline, the one I was mentioning earlier. So here, in this case, you have Jean-Claude Van Damme once again being in a situation where he's fighting for someone, like whether it's a family member or whether it's a friend. Here, it's actually his brother. As I mentioned earlier, his brother is the one that apparently got caught in a fight that was in over his head, ended up being paralyzed from that fight. And so here is Jean Claude Van Damme trying to make sure that he avenges his brother's misfortune. And that's the bad guy right there, the one that caused that paralyzing effect. And so once that happened, the whole movie is just him, as you see here, training and making sure that he can make himself worthy to become a kickboxer, at least in the league that's there. I believe this was in Thailand that the film constantly references. And it was really neat too. I mean, besides the storyline, there was some rich dialogue that was here and there. You got to see the mentor do some good scenes with Van Damme. You got to see, of course, some of the bad guys and the stuff that they were doing as well, and on more of the fairest level, including trying to force the fights to be rigged, in other words, and make sure that guy, the bad guy, the real bad guy, was truly going to win. So you got to see all that stuff play out, and it didn't seem hokey. It did not seem corny at all. It just played almost smoothly. And it's the kind of stuff that makes you forget you're supposed to be watching like a almost C or D grade type action movie. No, this was why this movie has definitely stood the test of time over 30 years now, if you can believe it, and it's still heralded and cherished within Van Damme's career. Another great point are the filming locales. It looks like they actually did it there within certain parts overseas, at least. I don't know if that was essentially Thailand that they were doing this film in, but it's always great to be able to see the actual international locations. Like right there, you get to see the towns, and you get to see several parts where Van Damme was training out there in some, I don't know if it was called a monastery or some kind of Buddha like monk type statues right there, essentially. That's really, really neat to see that kind of stuff in these movies. And then you got to see some other locales, like these little bars, these little dive bars that are here and there. So that was really neat too. Cinematography was okay. Nothing really stood out on that regard. I didn't expect it to, but still, it didn't hurt the film. In other words, so I thought it did pretty well. Music, same thing too. Nothing really memorable when it came to it. Instead, it just almost like made the movie go along as is. So it didn't detract from the film necessarily, but otherwise, good stuff. And then overall, I would still say that the probably the best part is with Van Damme himself, the less he's done, in other words, the more minimalist his action role is, the better. I mentioned that within Lionheart as well. Basically, if you have most of the other characters and the storylines and whatever action is happening carry Van Damme as opposed to Van Damme carrying the film himself, that's where he excels. That's where he makes the film truly worthwhile. A good comparison is Schwarzenegger. If you ever notice, the most best films that Schwarzenegger has ever been in have always been ensemble type films. Those are the films where he's obviously the main star, but he has everyone else driving the scenes for him, like Terminator 2, Predator is another good example. I would even say the films like Eraser is another good example as well. Those are the films where instead of him being the main focus, he has everyone else helping him, and he just happens to be caught in the middle, if you could say that. That's what I feel is very strong for this film too with Van Damme. The lesser he's doing, the better. In other words, and you can see later on the films that hurt his career are the ones where it's all about him. It's all about Van Damme, and then that's where things just went awry. But yeah, as far as the cons associated with this film, not really much to say per se. Obviously, you can only do so much when it comes to, hey, I'm avenging my brother type storylines. Maybe it would have helped to have seen some of the other minor characters, especially some of the bad guys within the film, and then see what they did. There was even a little teasing almost. There was that guy you see in the red shirt, some boss that he meets somewhere within the film, who apparently is a really rich guy. He's the one that's trying to rig or has rigged most of the other fights that these bouts happen there in Thailand. And so there he is trying to do the same thing with Van Damme's fight. I would like to see more of that too. Plus the bad guy himself, the guy you saw there, I can't remember what his name was, but he's of course very memorable with his infamous almost ponytail and then a tattoo. I would have loved to have seen more of him associated with the film. I didn't realize this too, but apparently they were friends making this film. Van Damme and the actor that played that big bad guy, they're actually really, really good friends. And so that's how he got him that part. But you would never believe it whenever you saw this movie because of how well that bad guy was, how well he was able to do things in terms of his action role. And so overall, I would give this movie a strong 3 out of 5 stars. I wish I could give it 4 stars, but I think it would have helped to have had more originality. But it's very, very close, very close. Not quite as good as Lionheart, but still, it was very memorable. But I'll see if then when I finally catch up to Bloodsport, if it's going to be even better than Kickboxer. And then I mentioned at the beginning, as far as the little bonus, you see him there. Is it me, or is Street Fighter 2 basically just a ripoff of this film? Because this guy, the bad guy with the ponytail and how tall he is, and the way he kicks, even the way he moves with his hands always upward, his elbows basically upward and his hands above his head. Isn't that Sagat? Isn't that where Street Fighter 2 got Sagat when it came to that influence? You even see the tattoos on him, almost looking like the scar that Sagat has. And of course, the movie taking place there in Thailand, you'll see that, like in that background there, that background was in Sagat's level 2. You can see that background there as well. And so it was a really neat surprise to see that and then have it be like Oh wow, so that's where they got all this influence when it came to the video game and essentially what drove some of the characters and the locales and the backgrounds, even some of the fighting and the way the moves were made. It seemed like it was straight out of here, straight out of Kickboxer. So someone tell me I'm wrong. Maybe I am when it comes to this stuff, but I could have sworn that Street Fighter 2 definitely borrowed a lot of ideas from this film as far as Kickboxer. Only thing that would have sealed it is there's that memorable scene whenever they set themselves up, him and the bad guy, Van Damme in other words, and the bad guy, where they put on those special that special glue and broken glass within their boxing gloves, if you could call it that. If that was ever within any of the Street Fighter games, then you just know that it would have been a straight up ripoff. But great, great stuff. But yeah, a very, very strong 3 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend seeing this. I'll include the links for it below as usual. Let me know what your thoughts are about Kickboxer. Let me know too if this was the second of the great Van Damme trilogy, with the first one being Bloodsport, and then Kickboxer, and then Lionheart. Let me know what your thoughts are on there too. So, all right, everyone. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.